The borders of the Middle East are some of the most heavily criticized and debated national boundaries in all the world. Whether it's people arguing that the Middle East's borders facilitate endless wars and disputes, or that the borders were based in an attempt to perpetuate dependency and colonialism. Many people from all walks of life take issue with how the Middle East is drawn, and understandably so. Ethnically, religiously, geographically, just about all of these borders don't work. Today, religion is the chief division across the Middle East, with the more traditionalist Hanbali Sunnis of Saudi Arabia in a power struggle against the Shia Persians of Iran. All the while, the Jewish state of Israel finds itself wrapped up in all of this, de facto aligned with Saudi Arabia against the more hostile Iran. The Saudis are in direct war against Shia movements in neighboring Yemen and Bahrain, while the Iranians are combating Saudi-backed radical Sunni movements like ISIS within Iraq and Afghanistan, not to mention Saudi-backed Kurdish independence movements. This isn't even speaking of the more secular nationalist governments of Turkey and Syria, who are themselves tied into the Saudi-Iranian religious feud, but with their own distinct agendas. With the Middle East being as chaotic as it is, I and some of the US of Z community came together to redraw the borders of the Middle East. While we've done something similar in the past for the states of the United States, tackling this issue for the Middle East is a whole different animal. These are peoples and regions with long histories littered with animosities, claims, and perceived rights, so while these redrawn borders won't produce a Middle East that will be perpetually peaceful or perfectly prosperous, these redrawn borders will act to address and resolve many of the foremost geopolitical disputes of these states today in a reasonable fashion with respect to each country and its population. In effect, this would provide a new balance of power in the Middle East, which would be conducive to a higher quality of life for the populations of these states. Hello audience, Mr. Z here with another video for you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We have videos like this every week, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned. One of the first rules we laid out for this redrawn map was that a sovereign Middle Eastern state cannot exist solely on the grounds of religious or ethnic difference. It must have the capacity to reasonably defend itself, otherwise it's not likely to remain independent for long, or will be highly dependent upon foreign support to continue to exist. Israel manages to stand as both an example and an exception to this rule, only because it has been supported for so long that it is now able to competently defend and sustain itself, whereas in the absence of outside support it would not have lasted for very long. This rule created an issue of several scattered populations losing the opportunity for representation, but it is a necessary move. For what good would it be to establish a small, independent state for a population that will surely be conquered or fought over by multiple larger states? The conclusion then was to form these states not as fully sovereign entities, but as proxies, clients, or autonomous republics within larger, more powerful, but still like-minded and friendly states. Iran and Saudi Arabia are the chief factors in play for this rule, given that over the past several decades they have been actively attempting to carve out their spheres of influence, essential empires built on religious commonality. Under this map, the states of Saudi Arabia and Iran have been transformed into the Arabian Kingdom and the Neo-Persian Empire, representing traditionalist Sunnis and Shias respectively, and under whom are multiple autonomous proxies. The Persian Empire would have its direct borders slightly reduced, ceding the religiously and ethnically distinct Balochistan to Pakistan, with whom it has more in common. Northwestern lands of Azeri background would be incorporated into Azerbaijan, which itself would be made an autonomous proxy of the Persian Empire. Lands to the south which overlap into Iraq and which are overwhelmingly Shia but ethnically Arab rather than Persian would also be formed into an autonomous state within the Persian Empire. And it would not be the only one of its kind, seeing Bahrain and a Gulf coastal Shia Arab state carved out from Saudi Arabia. The final of Persia's imperial proxies would be the exclave of Yemen, a population which is of Arab background but also uniquely belongs to the Zaydi school of Shia Islam, unlike the rest of the Persian Empire which particularly observes Jafari jurisprudence. Persia's core territory is fairly diverse itself, however upon close inspection there does not appear to be a significant drive for independence from any of these groups which have not already been named. Once again, that is the Arab Shias, Kurds, Azeris, and Balochi, with perhaps the addition of a small sliver of land along the border of Turkmenistan. Because of this, there is not much need to further partition core Persian land for the sake of stability. Politically, Persia would officially be a theocratic republic under the authoritarian leadership of a supreme leader. The Arabian Kingdom would have its borders extended slightly northward, embodying traditionalist Sunni Islam, particularly the Hanbali school. It is an absolute monarchy and features the proxies of remaining East Yemen, which practices Shafi jurisprudence, along with Kuwait, which practices Maliki jurisprudence. The United Arab Emirates would have their borders slightly expanded into former Oman territory distinct from the rest of Oman proper, and that are more notably mixed but largely under the Arabian Hanbali umbrella of traditionalist Sunniism. Oman has endured as an independent entity, being religiously distinct enough from all of its neighbors, belonging to neither the Shia nor Sunni branches, maintaining relatively peaceful relations with its neighbors, and being fairly capable of fending off invasion thanks to its large size, harsh terrain, and relatively capable military. The possibility for Oman to be subjugated by the Arabian Kingdom does exist, however the incentive for the Arabians to do so is quite low, especially given the opportunity this would give the Persians, who could take advantage of such an invasion to bring Oman over to their side, further weakening Arabia's influence in the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Oman. This territory exchange would allow for the cessation of ongoing Persian-Arabian proxy wars, and while this arrangement on the surface would ultimately benefit the Persians more than the Arabs, the termination of conflicts would be to the ultimate benefit of both parties, provide appropriate representation to the populations inhabiting these lands, and to the benefit of the Arabians consolidate their authority over the sympathetic states of the peninsula, further manifesting their ambition of leadership within the Sunni Islamic world. To the north of the Arabian Kingdom would be the United Arab Republic, a more secular but nationalist state which largely encompasses Hanafi Sunni Arab lands which formerly belonged to Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Turkey, and Lebanon. Certain lands along the coast have been made into smaller autonomous states, notably for Christian, Druze, and Shia populations. These lands have historically maintained a strong sense of identity based more heavily in pan-Arab culture and the cultural aspects of Islam. Geographically, this region also embodies the core of the ancient Assyrian Empire, adding to the historic identity of the UAR. The relatively more secular nature of the region insofar as government has some basis in the religious background of the region, with Hanafites placing greater emphasis on scholarly reason and pragmatism when regarding Islamic law and the scope of the public good, as opposed to the Hanbalis of the Arabian Kingdom who are more literal, conservative, and scripturalist in their interpretation of Sharia. By bringing this population together under a single government instead of dividing it across several states, there can finally manifest a pan-Arab state rooted in common law and identity, no longer feeling forcibly partitioned and torn in opposing directions by divergent forces such as the Shias, Kurds, Saudis, or the more liberal government of Jordan. This being said, the UAR would still house several non-Arab populations who, under this model, would benefit from having small autonomous states given the focus of the UAR upon Arab interests. Between the UAR and Arabian Kingdom is the alliance of Israel and the Kingdom of Jordan, two sovereign states who under this model would be brought into a close military and trade union to secure themselves against their more anti-democratic neighbors to the north and south. This arrangement would see Jordan assume responsibility for and provide citizenship to the stateless Palestinian Arab population in the West Bank, while simultaneously benefiting from the high development and productivity of Israel's economy. The two states have had a long and complicated history which has gradually transitioned to one of mutual cooperation and partnership. However, Israel's treatment of the Palestinian population has remained a major point of contention for the two. This model would help alleviate that and provide economic incentive for Jordan to assume responsibility for the Palestinian population, which they have historically wanted to help, but which they have been hesitant to fully welcome into their borders. Jordan is a unique instance of a state which is hesitant to deeply involve itself with any of the other Middle Eastern powers, be it the anti-monarchical Arab nationalists, the absolute monarchism of Saudi Arabia, or the Shia theocracy of Iran. Yet it lacks the power to establish a sphere of influence of its own. By bringing Israel and Jordan into close partnership, we in essence create a two-state solution which maintains Israel as a Jewish state, but provides a lifeline to the displaced Palestinians, benefiting all parties involved. A new state would be carved out from former Turkish, Iranian, and Iraqi lands to establish a homeland for the stateless Kurdish population. The state itself would be predominantly Sunni, particularly of Maliki jurisprudence, but there would be an additional autonomous state established to its northwest to account for the Shia Kurdish population as well, thus resolving both the Kurdish insurgency and the chief religious divide within the Kurdish population, further establishing a direct buffer between Turkey and Persia. Turkey would of course be diminished of land inhabited by Shias, Kurds, and Arabs along the border of the UAR, but otherwise would remain largely unchanged as an overwhelmingly secular Turkish republic rooted in Hanafi Sunnism. One could argue Turkey is inhabited by several smaller populations which deserve independence or autonomy as well, and second only to Persia, it would be the most diverse state in the Middle East. However, as we stated before, each of these states would be too small and incapable of defending themselves, in many cases being entirely landlocked within Turkey. What might be proposed as a solution for this is that Turkey adopts a federated model akin to Russia to grant these lands limited autonomy, but for the moment this doesn't appear to be a matter that could escalate into conflict given how spread out and small these populations are, with the key exception of a particularly large Kurdish cluster around central Anatolia. Cyprus additionally would be incorporated into Greece, providing limited autonomy to northern Cyprus, and all Turkish claims to the island would be forfeited to end the risk of conflict between Greece and Turkey. Finally, minor accommodations will be made across the states of North Africa to provide limited autonomy to the underpopulated southern interior lands of each state. Libya will be split into the states of Tripoli and Tobruk to cease the ongoing Libyan civil war, while Egypt establishes an autonomous zone for its Red Sea coastal area. The divide within Egypt isn't too stark, but it is significant enough that providing the coast greater autonomy could contribute to preventing future internal hostilities. And there we have it. Like I said, it may not be perfect, but it definitely relieves a lot of the building tension across the region and gives a voice to several populations either fighting for one or who wouldn't have a chance otherwise. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments below. The US of Z thanks you for watching, support your legion by liking the video, or join our ranks by subscribing for more. Mr. Z, out.